of bread. Open the eyes of our faith that we may behold him in all of his redeeming work. Amen.
Amen.
This past winter, I had the honor of officiating at a funeral of the husband of my cousin. It was on a snowy day in a very beautiful cemetery in New York. His name was John. And John, I had known for a number of years. And I always found him to be a really good man, a really great guy. He was very successful in life. But more importantly, he was very kind. He seemed to be unfailingly kind and caring. And he also was very generous. He was very generous with his goods, and he had a lot of goods. But even more importantly than that, he was generous in spirit, in the way he dealt with people of all kinds. Now his wife, my cousin, her name was Joan. She had died a few years prior to the time when he died. And I remember that after she died and after the funeral, and I did that funeral also, he wrote me a letter of thanks, thanking me for doing the funeral. But it was also a letter with, you might say, a bit of, I don't know if it was confession or just a setting the record straight. But after thanking me for doing the service, he said to me, I feel that I need to tell you that I do not believe in God. He went on to say, if there were a God, we'd all have to be saying, God hasn't done that good a job. When I replied to him, I said to him, I can understand where you're coming from. After all, I do live in the same world that you live in, and I have some idea of what's going on. And I think that where we differ, I think that we have different expectations of God. And what did I mean by that? Now today, the fourth Sunday of Easter, is always called Good Shepherd Sunday. And the reason, in part, is because the readings have to do with Jesus as the Good Shepherd. And because that image of Jesus is a treasured image of so many people. Probably the thing that summarizes it most is from the 23rd Psalm, that verse from the 23rd Psalm that goes, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. when I'm doing funerals, generally, when I have been doing, I don't do that many anymore, but when I'm choosing the readings, I'll always choose the 23rd Psalm. And I have us actually do it in the King James Version, the old version that so many people, especially of the earlier generation, memorized and knew very much by heart. And in fact, I always say, you're welcome to say it along with me if you'd like. And almost always, there's a chorus of people reciting it. They're not reading it, they're reciting it from earlier years. And also, after a while, I learned that when I was bringing communion to people with Alzheimer's disease, and often there'd be people with whom you couldn't really have much of any kind of a conversation because of the nature of their disease. But I would do the 23rd Psalm, and I was amazed at how often I'd look up and see these people who couldn't hold a conversation, mouthing the words that they had learned earlier in their life. Well, I brought along with me my pastoral staff. And this was actually given to me by a student at URI a lot of years ago who'd been to Italy and brought it back. This is an olive root, very strong. By the way, the person who gave it to me, his sister is in the congregation this morning. I've always considered a treasure that I'd like to look at it and contemplate what the pastoral ministry, the ministry to which I've been called for most of my life, what it's all about, and what it should be all about. Anybody, well, I wouldn't say anybody, but most people who have been ordained quickly come to a realization that it's not your role as an ordained person to be Mr. Fix-It or Ms. Fix-It. And when people say, Father, just tell me what to do, or Mother, just tell me what to do, our calling is not to be that kind of shepherd. And when we try to tell people just what to do, it usually turns out to be disastrous. So we end up asking ourselves, how does Jesus understand the job description of the Good Shepherd with us as the sheep? Does Jesus think that it's his job to solve all our problems? Is it the job of Jesus to smooth out all of our ups and downs? Or to try and make everything all better? Apparently not, because that doesn't happen. If that were Jesus' job, it doesn't work. We all have ups and downs. We've all, in one way or another, been to the mountaintop, but we've also been in Death Valley. And if we ever thought that the role of Jesus was to make everything smooth, and probably most of us have gone along with that assumption for a while, but we had found that we had to think again about that. And also to face the question, is that what we really want? Does any adult child really want to be controlled by his or her parents? We were not created to be puppets. We were not created to be robots. But as we think about our creation, both as children of our parents and children of God, we realize that we are born and brought up to make our own decisions as much as possible. That we are brought up to be put on our own 2 feet. I've been reading a book lately, a book lent to me by Jan Terry. It's by Sister Joan Chichester, and it's about different phrases in the Creed. Very intelligent book. And Sister Joan speaks of each of us as a unique child of God. She says, your God, like your parents, created you, initiated you, evolved you, provided for you what you need, and watches breathless for your well-being. But in the end, we reject the idea of God manipulating us, or God manipulating the laws of creation. Not that we think that God can't do any of that. But we come to think and understand that God generally doesn't do that. Just as we come also to question the idea that God rewards the good and turns away from those who are bad. As if we were not all deeply flawed. Even when we think that we're being good, and we're pretty sure of it, I think we probably all have had this experience that we might have been thinking that we were really good, but later discover that actually we've been being just awful. And I think it can go the other way. We can think we're being awful and it turns out to be pretty good. Certainly, as in the course of my life, I've somewhere along the line came to the conclusion that the healthiest thing and the most realistic thing that I can keep repeating to myself is this, that I am no better and no worse than anybody else. As parents, and And those of us who are parents know this. We may want our children to be as good as possible. But in the end, our Lord doesn't depend, our love for our children does not depend on how good or bad they are. We love them because they are our children. Could it be that the love of God for us is like that? And in the pastoral ministry, the job is not to judge. The pastor is not meant to be a judge. The pastor is meant to be with the members of his or her flock. To be with them through their ups and through their downs. I've developed a kind of standard response that I use when anybody asks me to be a judge about something. My response is this: it's not my department. Now, regarding the husband of my cousin John, the non-believer, as he characterizes himself, I wouldn't think of making a judgment about him. But I would make a guess that John is with God. And that John is okay. That actually John is more than okay. And that John is at peace. I think that Jesus' idea of the job of the Good Shepherd is to be with people, not over people, not over us, with us. And that's why we tend to refer him from time to time as Emmanuel, meaning God with us, at our side, through it all, gently guiding us in our evolution. I believe that in our lives, we are on an evolutionary path, a spiritual pilgrimage of discovery. I believe that we are meant to grow. And I take some instruction from the contemporary, well, he's died now, but he's from our time, the theologian and scientist Teilhard de Chardin. This kind of spiritual evolution as a continuing process that moves toward a new level of consciousness in which the universe will come to a perfect unity and find itself one with God. He's saying that our destiny is to be one with God. And I believe that the marks of our, or at least some marks of our evolution in that direction go like this. We're heading that way when we are understanding ourselves as all members of one human family. Not just understanding that, but acting accordingly. And when we are increasingly taking care of one another, end of our earthly environment. And when we are learning to walk in the ways of peace. O God, whose Son Jesus is the good shepherd of your people, grant that when we hear his voice, we may know him who calls us each by name and follow where he leads. Amen.
Amen.